5 minutes and then we.
Jeremy asked me how you started the webinar.
No. Should I start it
Yeah,
now?
we can start the webinar now.
And then we wait for the meeting.
Okay.
I haven't seen this. Yeah. Patty?
What is it? Carrie Rothschild. What is it? Carrie Finnegan? I never know with my Zoom account. I put so many of my work time, but.
Got it. Okay. We will start in 2 minutes. Do we have panel?
Allow, yeah. Yep, I'm good. Thank you.
Anyone that's just walked in, can you please sign in the sign-in sheet on the back table? Thank you.
The-
Oh. I know, that, it's fine, I get it. I was seeing like, so I'm on listservs and stuff, so I know, so, but it's fine, like, I want to be open and share. Yeah, and, yeah, exactly, it's totally fine.
Good evening, everyone. We will start the meeting. We will start with roll call.
Okay, everyone, I will be calling roll call. If I call your name and you are on Zoom, please unmute yourself and mute yourself once again. Thank you. Julio Peña III,
Present.
Jonathan Martinez,
Present.
Rosie Mota, Grisel Amador, Damian Andrade, Jalia Bailey, Joan Body, Esteban Chavez, Jamie Freed,
Here.
don't count towards quorum. Nicole Huang, Cynthia Jeffers.
Present.
Hi, Cynthia. You don't count towards quorum. Joanna Romero, Pat Ruiz, Kalina Surma. Short of two.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jonathan Martinez, and I serve as the chair of the Health, Education, and Social Service Committee for Community Board 7. We are here this evening to hear from Brooklyn Rise Charter Schools rewarding their new school facility at 410 40th Street. As many of you know, these projects involve construction of a new site with the goal of expanding the school current K-5 to middle school, pretty much. I want to make clear at this time that the committee or the board have not taken any position on this project. For that purpose of tonight's meeting is to learn more about the proposal directly from the school leadership, to better understand the scope and timeline of the project, and most importantly, to hear from members of the public about your questions, concerns, and perspective. We appreciate the opportunity to engage in this conversation, and I want to thank Brooklyn Rise Charter School and Kari Finnegan for being here to share their plans. And with that, I would like to welcome Kari and begin this conversation.
So yeah, I'll start off. I was here last month at the Education Committee meeting, as many of you know, and so I tried to change my presentation slightly, just so it wasn't total repeat, of information, sorry about that. And also to kind of address some of the concerns that I've been seeing arise, but I'm definitely eager to address any additional questions or concerns as well. But I am Kari Finnegan, 16-year educator. I did start as a self-contained 6th grade teacher in a traditional public school in Hartford, Connecticut, which is also where I grew up. Went to Colby College, studied women's studies and sociology before becoming a teacher, where I then got my master's at Teachers College for Education Policy and Leadership. I am a Sunset Park resident. I have 3 children, 6, 2, and 10 months. I'm a parent association member at PS 958. I have a current 1st grader there and a future 3K kiddo as of next year. Other interests, running, reading, and art. So Brooklyn Rise, a couple things that have come up that I just wanted to be clear, because I think sometimes it was making it look like we're a new school. We're not. We opened in 2019, so this is year 6 of our school operation. We currently serve grades K through 6. Our original location for the first 3 years of operation was 475 53rd Street. For those of you familiar, 5th Avenue and 53rd Street, the corner of, above the Rite Aid, below the Senior Center. We currently reside at 9 Hanover Place, downtown Brooklyn, because after exhaustive real estate search, we couldn't find space when we grew out of our temporary space. So we had to have a temporary relocation to 9 Hanover Place. So that happened in 2022. We'll talk a little bit more about facilities later, but 85% of our families stayed with us. We went from 1 school bus to 7 school buses, with the promise and commitment to our families that we were always planning to return to Sunset Park. That's our original location. That's what we were chartered for. Our charter was designed with Sunset Park in mind, and our families, we now have little siblings, and our families know that the plan was always to return. We did eventually find what is going to be our future home. I also want to say it's not like proposed, it is happening. The lease has been approved by NICEAD and the building is in progress. As some of you may have seen, the construction, the foundation is going in this month. And so that I will talk more about the timeline on that. I'm happy to share more about that, but that is definitely happening. It's not like in question. Neighborhood, again, originally for Sunset Park, currently in downtown Brooklyn. So we do have kind of students from all over Brooklyn. Charter schools are also open enrollment. They're not zoned by zip code. So it's always kind of, you always kind of serve the families who come in. We currently have 320 kiddos. We'll have 420 when we're at full K through 8 growth. Oh, and that also is not proposed. We last year received a full 5-year renewal for our charter and grade level expansion. So we are expanding to K through 8. It's not, that is also, and again, just a little bit more backstory on that. When I originally applied for a charter in 2018, it was for a K through 5 charter. That was our initial plan, was just to have 1 small elementary school in the Sunset Park community. I know the landscape has changed a lot, but at the time, there weren't as many options for kind of what we were trying to do in terms of our small school model. And so that was the original intent. Now, after operating for a number of years, our families year after year were asking us to please expand to a middle school. It was not, again, originally our plan, but family partnerships is a value of our school. So based on that, in organization with the board, we did apply last year to expand to K through 8. So we are 1 small independent public charter school. There's no plans for multiple more schools. It's just this. So again, full K through 8, 420 kiddos. That will be the extent of Brooklyn Rise forevermore. Some kind of clarity on how school governance and accountability works. I'm sure many of you already know this, but just in case folks don't. So in 2018, again, we were chartered by the New York State Education Department for a 5-year initial charter term. 2021, we received our mid-charter term evaluation conducted by NICEAD. So that happens during every charter term. You get like a mid-charter evaluation and feedback. 2024 was our renewal evaluation. So that's conducted with 4 NICEAD state school evaluators who come to your school for 3 days. They conduct classroom observations, staff interviews, family interviews, board interviews, and data analysis of your data thus far. So that happened last year, and that at the June 10th of last year, so a little just over a year, we were given a full 5-year, which is the longest term a charter can receive is 5 years. You cannot have a charter longer than that. And again, like I said, they also granted us permission to expand to grades 6 through 8. Additionally, we have a board, public board meetings. Board members are approved by NICEAD, so they can't join the board without being approved and kind of going through that process. Minutes are posted monthly on our website. We also have public committee meetings on a monthly basis. We have 3 committees that are required: finance, academic, and governance. So each month I'm at those 3 meetings in addition to the monthly meeting to report on school finances. Again, all public, academic, like how we're doing academically. And then the governance committee is really about like making sure that the board is doing their job and whatnot. I also provide myself really available to our families. So there's monthly coffee with the principal where all families are invited to speak to me directly about any questions or concerns about the school. And we also have a school leadership council. We call it SLC. For those of you in the traditional public school system, it's kind of like the SLT. So it's like that structure where we are able to, again, get more input and feedback on our school structures and operations. Funding. So I know this is often debated, but for me, speaking for myself and for our school, charter schools are public schools. We're considered non-traditional public schools, so we are publicly funded. We're given slightly smaller per pupil funding than traditional public schools. And we run 100% on public funds. So I know some charter schools are different and they do a lot of fundraising and they get a lot of private money. That is not us. Our board and myself are really committed to just using public dollars. Some small grassroots fundraising efforts that happen along the way are like bake sales, like a Giving Tuesday fundraiser, but nothing beyond that. We do receive federal funding through Title I, Title III, and Title IV grants. And then we also, when we first were starting, received a federal CSP grant, which was like a charter school startup grant from the federal government. as well as the America Rescue Act additional funding that came in during COVID. So that's kind of like all of our funding streams. Oh, I didn't, and I should have included, because I know this is also a point of contention, we do also receive lease assistance. So charter schools, because we're public schools, we serve public school students. We need space for our students to be educated. So the way it works is you apply to the DOE for space. They reject your request for space, and then once they reject that request for space, you become eligible for lease assistance. And that is what allows us to operate. But NYSED does have to evaluate all of our leases. I know that unfortunately, historically, not always with the due diligence, but our leases, again, they're, the lease assistance, you can do the numbers on the square footage that we have. We're currently paying very below market in downtown Brooklyn, but that is how the process works. And you submit your lease to NYSED. Once they approve it, then you're eligible for the lease assistance so that you have a space for your students. Enrollment, we are, again, a non-traditional public school, and our enrollment process is open to all students at the grade levels we serve. Again, it's not zip code zoned, but we do have priorities in our enrollment to kind of make sure like our student population continues to be the population that our charter was designed to serve. So we do give a preference in our lottery to students whose home language is other than English. We also give students who qualify for free and reduced price lunch get a preference in our lottery. And then you have to give CSD 15 priority to any kiddos who reside in CSD 15, and then also siblings are given priority. We do intentionally recruit for and seek to retain student populations that have historically been underserved by educational systems. That is a requirement by NYSED and also just a belief that we have, and something that when they're doing our evaluation, they look at those numbers to ensure that we are making good faith efforts. Our current school demographics at Rise, so in terms of race ethnicity, 70% of our kiddos identify as Hispanic or Latinx, 20% identify as Black, 7% Asian, 2% white, and 1% two or more races. Our diverse learner population, we have 25% of our kiddos have IEPs. They receive special education services. We do provide ICT classrooms as well as school counseling on site. And then we contract with related service providers for things like speech, physical therapy, and occupational therapy. 40% of our kiddos are multilingual learners and receive multilingual learner services. And 90% of our kiddos do qualify for free or reduced price lunch. Where do our kids live? So as I was mentioning, 50% of our kiddos currently reside in the 11220 and 11232 zip codes, which are traditionally considered Sunset Park zip codes. 70% are Sunset Park or south of. So this is why the student transportation story, when we first were in Sunset, we only had one school bus, and then we relocated to downtown Brooklyn. We have 7 school buses because we committed to our families that for the time that we were in downtown Brooklyn, before we returned to Sunset Park, we would provide them all with transportation regardless of eligibility. So that's something that we have to budget for to ensure we are eligible as a public school to OPT, public school busing. So we partner with them and our kiddos come, and then any kiddos who don't qualify for eligibility, we cover the cost of that. Only about 10% of our kiddos are family drop off or pick up currently. When we return to the Sunset Park community, obviously we're going to have kiddos now that are in downtown Brooklyn and some other areas. And so our commitment to those families will be the same, that we'll provide busing for any students who need it after our relocation. So there's a few things in the charter. There's many kind of commitments that you make, but specifically for our school, strong teaching was really one of the cornerstones of what we committed. So teachers get at least 15 days of summer professional development before the school year begins. During that time, there's curriculum internalization and practice, anti-bias, anti-racist educator training, mission and vision alignment for the school, and then practice, just really getting ready for the kiddos to arrive. Each teacher also gets a one-on-one coach that conducts at least weekly observations and coaching meetings. We also provide our teachers with 2 hours of professional development weekly on Fridays. 90% of our teachers are fully certified, and the other 10% are currently enrolled in programs that put them on track to certification. We do have high staff retention rates, never going below 90%, and we intentionally seek to hire and retain a diverse teaching staff that reflects the population of the students that we serve. Sorry. Also, if you want to receive a charter, one thing that you have to do is prove that your school, right, the original intent of the charter school movement was to provide communities with a school option that doesn't currently exist there. So you have to prove that there's some kind of unique educational opportunity that families who choose your school are getting access to. So for us, that is primarily our 2-teacher model across all K-5 classrooms with at least one certified special educator at each grade level so that we're able to have that ICT class at each grade. We also provide 4 enrichment classes, K through 5, music, dance, art, STEM. So like enrichment was another big part of what our offering was important to us. Mom's an artist, dad's a poet. So like the arts is really important to me personally. And I wanted to make sure that that was always embedded in RISE. So our kiddos get 2 45-minute enrichment blocks each day, Monday through Thursday. We also do monthly field trips, K through 4, as well as extended overnight trips for our 5th through 8th grade kiddos. We also have a commitment to small group learning that is written into our charter. So this also goes a little bit into the facility piece, because when we were looking for a facility and trying to find, like, because we have the 2-teacher model and because we have a commitment to small group learning, our classrooms have to be a certain physical size in order to honor that model and that commitment to families, right? You can't have a small room and have 2 teachers with 2 U tables and the desk and the rug area. So that was part of a facility challenge, was kind of trying to identify a space that would accommodate our commitments to our families around small group learning and intervention. And then we do select our curriculum and our instructional training based on the diverse learners that we serve. We also have an inclusive learning department that has, as of next year, because our model is like kind of going to be 3 at each, like 3 multilingual learner coordinators. There are K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 3 special education coordinators, K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 3 social workers, K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, so that we are staffed and putting the resources towards supporting the diverse learners that we serve. Again, we're a K through 8. We weren't at the time in our original charter, but now it's a K through 8 small school model. So just 2 classes at every grade level throughout K through 8. So it's always just 2 classes at each grade level. And then we cap our classes at 26. 40 minutes of health class and 40 minutes of fitness Monday through Thursday for grades 6 through 8. And then we do have a choose your own enrichment program for our middle schoolers on Fridays, where we partner with local community enrichment providers. So we're in downtown Brooklyn now. So our partners are local to downtown Brooklyn for the most part. So Court 16, Brooklyn Bouldering, Park Slope Performing Arts, Jazz and Powers, Brooklyn Clay Yoga, Cooking, Robotics, and Sunset Spark, where kiddos can choose what they want to do for their Friday enrichment, and they get to work with those enrichment providers on Fridays. When we return to Sunset Park, we're excited to partner with more local providers here. So because I know there's been, again, some questions around our Forever Home for Brooklyn Rides, although I meant to first go here, school space search timeline. So again, before you can even apply for a charter, you have to search for space to identify a place of which your school can exist. So when we applied in the charter, we'd identified a number of potential spaces, but again, you can't go to private space until you're denied by the DOE space. So first in 2018, we applied, denied by the DOE. So then we identified our temporary incubation space at 53rd and 5th Avenue, which is where we opened fall of 2019. It was 10,000 square feet of space, which was just fine for us year 1 because we're a slow growth model. So we just opened with KN1 that year, then K2. We were only supposed to be there for 2 years, but obviously COVID happened and it was particularly challenging at that time to find space, given everything that was going on in the world. But in 2020, we did find a space and we applied to NYSED for a CSD change to be open in a space that we identified in CSD 20. So for those not familiar, the line is, I think, 54th, 56th, 5th, maybe. We had found a space at like 60th, but 60th is technically CSD 20, and we were denied by NYSED the request for a CSD change, and we were told we have to maintain our location in CSD 15, even if the location is very adjacent. It doesn't matter because of the politics in CSD 20. So in 2021, we applied to the BSA for a zone change on a space west of 3rd Avenue. We were also denied during that process for a zone change. So that was kind of where it was like, we can no longer fit in the 10,000 square feet of space that we had in Sunset. We were forced to relocate to downtown Brooklyn, where we are currently, 37,000 square feet of space. And then, of course, our space search continued because, again, the commitment to families when we relocated to downtown Brooklyn is like, we are coming back to Sunset Park. That is the plan. That is where we're chartered to be. It's where we originally operated for our first 3 years. And so then we did eventually find 410 40th Street, which brings us today to this conversation. So again, that lease was signed. And again, I know questions and concerns around the way lease assistance law works. I don't pretend to be an expert on the law, but again, we signed we're at the whim, right? We have to find a developer who can identify a space who's willing to build the school, because we have no budget. We have no money to contribute to building an actual school building. And so then it's like, we've identified a number of spaces in different areas, but if spaces are zoned residential, folks are not going to sell them to a developer who's not going to develop residential, because that's the best economic move for the developer. I also hear folks saying like that is a need here in Sunset Park, which I completely understand. But this particular lot of land, the reason why it was able to be a deal that was done for us is because it's zoned commercial and not zoned residential. As an example, the St. Rocco space, which was one space that we went down quite far down the line of trying to make a deal, but in the end, the Catholic, I forget what it's called, but diocese, they wanted to sell it to a residential developer, which is the process they're going through now because it makes them more money to not have a school there, but to have a residential apartment buildings, like they can sell it for more. So again, this site was zoned commercial, it couldn't be residential, so it was the site that the developer identified as one that he would be willing to build the school for us. It's 4 stories, 40,000 square feet. That will be at K-8. And it is, yeah, and then we sign a long-term lease. So we sign like a 35-year lease with the developer. And so that's kind of how they are able to like have the security of a long-term tenant, because schools historically are stable tenants, right? If you have a commercial business going in somewhere, they're at the whims of different things, but schools tend to stick around. So that is why, and also because we received our full 5-year renewal last year with the expansion, they know that our school is in good standing. So yeah, as what's happened so far, the demolition of the gas station building happened in April. June was April and June, as of early June, the environmental testing was completed and we passed all the required testing for that space. End of this month, groundbreaking for the foundation, pending some final construction sign-offs. The foundation is going to be complete by mid-August of this summer. By October of this fall, they'll finish topping out the 4th floor. By April, by next spring, construction will be substantially completed with a targeted sign-off date of next summer. That would mean in the ideal world, we're relocating our school back to Sunset Park next summer. However, as we know with construction, things can be, it's like there's no guarantee. So we do have a plan to stay in downtown Brooklyn if we need to for one additional year after that, which is when we would be fully grown K-8. I included the plans, again, just as not something that we necessarily need to go through. I know I just talked a lot, so happy to answer questions.
Right, thank you. So with this, I will open the floor for questions. I just want to make sure that we keep it respectful and give the opportunity to Kari to answer your questions before you ask another question again. And right, we can start with your question. Okay. You need the mic. Yeah.
Thank you, Pat.
I'm just asking for like a clarification of fact. When you started, you were saying, I just want to be clear, community board. Okay. When you started, you said community board 7 hasn't approved anything yet. And like I think that you wanted to be really clear on that. But then when you started speaking, you said, this is happening. It's going forward.
Well, so
Can you clarify, please?
we haven't taken any position in terms of like our position on the school. Their development is totally separate from the community board. So it was just about our position or letter of support or anything on that sense. So we haven't taken any position.
And from my perspective, again, the approval is from NICED, who's our charter authorizer. That has already happened. We don't require approval from Community Board 7 or any, it's like the NICED is our charter authorizer. Of course, we want to hear the questions and concerns, and that matters to us, and we want to be a good community partner. In the end, like our commitment is to the 320 families we currently serve and NICED, who's our charter authorizer, but there's no like approval or anything that we require to move forward. If we had a zone change or like we were trying to build higher than we were allowed to, then that would go through Community Board 7. But because we're building a building that is zoned completely as of right, there's no additional requirement of like approval.
Julio, you can go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Carrie, for coming back here. I feel like I'll admit I'm getting a little deja vu. I remember, I think it was 2017 or 2018. You came before our board. I was chair of the education committee at the time, and there were some similar concerns about a charter school opening up in Sunset Park, particularly now when we have through potentially 3 charter schools with just in a short walking distance of each other. I have a couple of clarifying questions. One, can you clarify who I know for charter schools in New York State, there are different not governing authorities, but different issuing agencies. Can you clarify which issuing agency Brooklyn Rise operates under?
Ours is the New York State Education Department Charter School Office. But it is, and so it's the regions technically, I think, like, you know, who are the ones who grant it.
And so you talked a little bit about, you know, finding a forever home for Brooklyn Rise. Can you talk through about, like, were there other locations that you looked into? I know you mentioned the formerly St. Rocco's site. Were there other locations that you were considering?
Yeah, there were a few others more, again, because again, I was trying to be considerate of like where there are schools in the space early on in my search. That was like a big priority. Obviously, as it got further down, it was more difficult to like, there were not any options. So one was on around 39th, the 39th Street, 9th Avenue subway, the D there. There are a few sites, some of you might be familiar, like it's a Holiday Inn and Garden. There's a parking garage there. That there was like half of that building, but unfortunately it wasn't tenable. The ceiling heights were too low to be a school. So there are some requirements that in order to have a school, right, there's certain requirements that have to be met in terms of egress and ceiling height and things of that nature. So that did not work. There's also a kind of car garage right by that on 39th and 9th that was for sale. But again, that can be built residential. So the price point for selling that land, right, they're waiting for a residential developer to offer on that land. So those were the two that we probably got the furthest along. But again, like our promise to our families was to come back to Sunset Park, but it did get to a point that for me, it's like, I need a school for my students, period. And so we also did open up our search to places like in Gowanus because we're in downtown Brooklyn, right? So now we are serving families. And so as much as it was going to be hard to face our families and be like, we can't honor the promise that we made to come back to Sunset Park, it was like, we just need a school. So there were a number of sites like on 3rd Avenue that we got pretty close with that, again, for one reason or another, just those fell through. And this site that we are currently going to is truly the only one that came to be. And again, we're that's part of it. But those were some of the ones we looked at. I'd be happy to provide a full list too, because I do.
I have two more questions, sorry. One, you said that Brooklyn Rise isn't paying for the construction of the school. Can you clarify who is paying for the construction of the school site?
Developer's name is Scott Barone, and he's developed a number of charter schools, mostly in Queens. And this was something that was challenging because we had tried to kind of partner with a number. This is the other kind of difficulty, is like we tried to partner with a few different developers, but folks who are in development in general don't understand school development specifically and like the economics of that and like what it takes to make it work for them economically, but also to understand that we don't have any money to give up front, right? Like we give a security deposit, but we can't invest anything beyond that. And so you need to find a developer who really understands the financing of a charter school. Also, banks don't want to finance a charter school because we're only guaranteed 5 years at a time, right? So it's like, that's not a good bet for a bank. So there's financing complications. So Scott Barone, sorry, the short answer, I know I can get long-winded, is that Scott Barone is the developer for this site. And the reason it worked out with him is because he did understand like what was required of a site to develop.
And so then the developer, would they be the owner of the building, and then Brooklyn Rise would be leasing from them? So, and then my final question, I know you mentioned you signed a 35-year lease, but charters are renewed, thank you, renewed every 5 years. Let's say we have a change in administration, state administration, and they decide to roll back some charters. Brooklyn Rise doesn't get a renewed license in the near future. Can you talk a little bit about, and you may not know the answer to this, but what would happen to the building? I'm curious what would happen then?
Worst case scenario, we would have to default on our lease agreement. I'm not sure, to your point, what like the legal or financial penalties of that are for us or for me personally, or the board, I guess, because the board is technically the ones who sign, or I sign the lease as a representative of the board. But they would then just have to find a new tenant for the space. Like it wouldn't, it would still be, they would still have ownership of the building. And again, it's zoned for commercial, but also community use. So it could be used for, I guess, a variety of community different uses at that point. Yeah.
Back, Jonathan.
Yeah, you continue with the questions, the public.
Hi, my name is Johanna Bjorkane, and I'm a neighbor here in Sunset Park on 46th Street. I was also co-chair of the Budget and Finance Committee of the Class Size Working Group for the Department of Education. And so class size is a really big priority to me. And money. Your lease, your financial statements are not online, but you were audited in 2023, and that audit is online. And I looked at that, and it looks like according to that, was projecting your leases to be $1.6 million for 2025. What is, you said you've signed a 35-year lease. This money is paid for, it's yours, like, oh, the NICEAD pays it. In case anybody is unclear, this money comes out of the Department of Education budget. It's money that it's not going to 3K, it's not going to summarizing, it's not going to after school, it's going to charter schools. And it's 8% of the DOE budget. Last year, it was $3.2 billion. So with that question, because taxpayers are paying that lease bill, and we're paying it out of our education budget, you've signed a 35-year lease. Can you tell us what the dollar amounts are going to be? Because we're the ones paying that. And a follow-up question, the Office of District Planning and the projections for Sunset Park, our enrollment decline and population decline, 5% year over year. We currently have a seat excess in Sunset Park, both for K to 5 and 6 to 8. If this continues, the Office of District Planning will be evaluating what happens with the schools that are here. As a charter, you're not part of that process. You get to say my community and talk about the students that are currently enrolled, not the students that are going to be enrolled in 35 years. And at the same time, you say that you're a community partner and you want to be partnering with the community. Why should your school be prioritized for enrollment and protection from enrollment decline over the schools in Sunset Park? And wouldn't, in the context that you weren't able to get a waiver or whatever it would be to relocate to a different district, for example, District 20, only 30% of the classrooms are projected to be in compliance with the class size law, as opposed to 90% in Sunset Park. And given that because of the class size law, the things that you described in your charter that make you unique are no longer unique in this community, why wouldn't the community-minded thing to do be to go to the board and say, hey, let's absorb ourselves into the local schools?
Yeah, I wish I had brought something to write down because there were a lot of questions in there. I want to make sure I address them. If I forget one, definitely let me know. I think the first question around, if I did say NICEAD paid lease assistance, I definitely misspoke. We applied to the DOE for school space. When they reject our request for space, to provide us space because our students are public school students, and the DOE has to legally provide them with school spaces in which to learn. Once they reject that request, then yes, the DOE does fund lease assistance. Now, it is capped, so the maximum amount that you can receive is 30% of your overall per pupil funding. And so that is a fixed amount. We can never go above that. If we did sign a lease that went above that fixed amount, we would have to dip into our operational budget, which is obviously not responsible to do. So we always have to keep our lease number below that. I don't have the numbers memorized, but I can say we're currently at 320. And again, if you did like the math of 320 times whatever our per pupil funding is last year, I believe it was around 18,000 and change, take 30% of that. Like that's, the math is always like, it has to be that, right? So it's like when we're 420 students, you can multiply that. We don't know what the per pupil number is going to be when we're K through 8, but that is always like the very hard and fast like law around lease assistance and how the DOE approaches that in their commitment to ensure that all public school students have space. In terms of your question around like enrollment here, again, I am not at all trying to deny, and I have like very affirmative understand that when we first set out to apply for our charter in 2017, the landscape here was very different in terms of schools and enrollment and size, and that has changed a lot. However, what's hard is like our charter is the same, right? The charter that we wrote in 2017, if you want to change that, you have to go through an entire process to kind of amend the charter. We were set out to serve this community. So that would require what they call a material revision to go in front of the Board of Regents. And again, I'm not saying that wouldn't be something that we'd be potentially open to do, but it is like, you know, the families that we are that came and joined our school and really took a leap of faith when we first opened and were at the time and are still, I hear you saying that you don't believe there's anything unique about our school, but families who choose RISE are choosing it for a reason. And it is some of the things that I mentioned, not just class size, our commitment to enrichment and experiential learning, which again, I'm not saying doesn't happen in other spaces, but that combination and the K-8 model is still rare. Obviously, we had no idea Sunset Brooklyn Prospect was going to come here. That was never, they were not here when we opened. They relocated here to a space that we had been told was impossible to turn into a school because we wouldn't receive a zone change. They have a lot more kind of political power and influence than we do as like a small independent school. So we had never even looked at the Sunset Yard space because we had been told by developers we wouldn't be able to get the zone change. They did, they relocated here. We obviously had no idea to know that that was going to happen. The year that we left was the year they moved in. So again, I really do hear you. I mean, some of the things to be like community-minded partners. Yes, we can't relocate to CSD 20, but many of our families reside in that community, right? So being conscious and careful around like our recruitment efforts in this local area where we do know a lot of students can and are served by local students. So that's one thing where we can be more like conscientious and about recruitment efforts and where we do that. I just also would like to say though, that in terms of like students, there are many open enrollment traditional public schools, right? So I see families lined up waiting for buses and they're going to public schools, traditional public schools in Park Slope and more North Brooklyn every day, right? So families are getting to choose where they send their child to school, regardless of whether it's a charter or a traditional public, right? Families are making those decisions all the time based on what they believe is best for them and their family. So that I can't control like where families ultimately decide. I also don't know the math as well as you probably do, given the work that you did in terms of like, if we did close our school tomorrow, is there actually 320 seats for all the students that we serve? And are those schools, right? Our families are choosing our school because we're just 2 classes at every grade. All those things that I mentioned before, plus others, right? This is the community that they're choosing. So then we would force them to have to select other community, other options, which again, that's like our commitment is to them and to our original charter. So I do really hear you and I understand the demographics have changed. I also obviously really believe in small class size. It was the entire design of my school was to have a 13-to-1 ratio in every classroom, K-5. The class size law didn't exist when I first opened RISE. So that, there are things that change and evolve, and I do really hear that. I think, again, I know that folks might not agree, but I believe we're part of helping all schools meet class size, right? The only way, if you have a fixed number of buildings, a fixed number of teachers, the only way to meet mandates like class size is more classes, right? More teachers. And so you need more space to make sure you can meet those mandates. Or if there's declining enrollment, yeah, like you can meet those that way as well. So again, I like to think that that is part of what we're also doing is helping all schools meet those class size mandates.
Person in the back.
The shake. If it's working. Okay. Hi, my name is Elise. I live near the Greenwood Cemetery. Thank you so much for this presentation. Very informative. And I'm a community member like Joanne. So I am not a parent. I give anyone who's a parent lots of props. And I'm really unfamiliar with the charter school concept, but I have, I guess, 2 questions and a comment. My first question is, it seems like your charter schools are a private institution. So could you speak about what does that funding institution consist of? Who are your funders? That's my first question.
So, and again, you ask different folks, you might get different answers. My answer to that question, again, public schools by law in the charter law here in New York are public schools. We are publicly funded. Folks will say privately run. I prefer saying independently run. So the board, our board of our school, the Board of Trustees of Brooklyn Rise, they are the governance structure for our school. So that's why I'm held accountable to them, right? They're my boss. That's why I meet with them monthly at the monthly board meetings, and then I attend each committee meeting because I report to them, and they need to know that I'm doing my job as school management and honoring the promises and commitments in our charter. So that's their oversight of me. And then there's the NICED oversight of them. So as our charter authorizing body, NICED has to hold the board accountable for things that they by charter law need to be able to do, things like finances and of that. And again, there are definitely charter schools who do receive a lot of private funding. That just is not us. We are a small independent startup charter school.
Okay, so you have, all your funding is public funding. Is that correct? Okay. Okay, so my second question was, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about your recruitment efforts. What did those look like? A very tangible, like what do they look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, we don't have big budgets like Brooklyn Prospects. So you're never going to see bus ads or like things of that nature. It's mostly grassroots, mostly family referrals. We are small, right? So a lot of our kiddos now, we have siblings in our school, family referrals from the community. I will say when we relocated to downtown Brooklyn, because that was a brand new community for us, we did have to do more outreach in that year, just so folks knew we're here, this is what our school's about. Because when I first opened Brooklyn Rise here in the Sunset Park community, one thing in order to get chartered you have to do is community engagement, right? Like attending CB7 meetings, attending CC15 meetings, going to community organizing events, talking to folks in the community. I had to have a certain number of signatures from families in the zip code of the school, of the place that I'm trying to open the school, so you have to like collect that information. So a lot of the engagement initially early on was here in Sunset because that's where we're trying to open our school. Now most of our recruitment efforts here are, flyers. You might see flyers of ours around. Sometimes I'll post in like the moms groups. But there's not, and the other like mailers. So you can do GR mailers.
Okay, so I'm gonna have a clarifying question. So do you have recruitment goals or targets that you have to meet?
Good question. So each grade has 52 kiddos. So each year we need to add 52 kiddos to our school population in order to meet our enrollment targets. NICED holds us accountable to a 90%. You have to be 90% or higher enrolled, right? Right now, our enrollment is 320, but we're authorized to be enrolled at 360. So we're not fully enrolled, but we're meeting our targets. And again, to the point of like small class sizes, we don't really like work to maximize. We don't need 26 kids in every classroom. So yeah, those are the kind of the targets we work to hit.
Okay, so my last comment, sorry if I'm taking too much time. So I want to speak a little bit about something that I heard from a friend, Jeremy, your wife. Sorry, Robin. There was something that you had mentioned that I found very interesting about test scores. You're aware that this community is a very diverse community, folks who may not be speaking English at home, that may not be their native tongue, so they need to learn a new language. I may be incorrect to this, but I think that the test scores of non-native learners in charter schools are not at the same level as the comparative age cohort in the public school system. So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. So definitely aware, again, when we were doing a community engagement originally about our school, one of the concerns we were hearing from families was like a concern around charter schools signaling gentrification, which was in part the reason why we designed our enrollment policy to give preference to students whose home language are other than English, and to give preference to students who qualify for free reduced price lunch, because by having those preferences in our lottery, we're able to ensure our school demographic continues to be what we set out to serve. In terms of multilingual learners in specifically, and I think maybe what the information from last time that I shared that might have been specifically is like during our renewal process, right? They look at our data and they again, we share our data publicly with our families as well. And that was one of the data things that was made clear to us. That data was from maybe our second year of state testing. So it's a little bit old data. But that was something that came out where we're held accountable to two things. We have to perform at or above the average of the state and also at or above the average of CSD in terms of state testing metrics, both overall and for subgroup populations like students with disabilities, economically disadvantaged students, and multilingual learner students. So we have to do that for both the state and CSD 15. CSD 15 is one of the highest performing districts in New York. And so that bar, right? And so what you saw there was that, yes, we met our metric for New York State, but we fell below the metric for CSD 15 in terms of the percentage of proficiency for our multilingual learners. Every other category, we met or exceeded. So that was reflection for us, like data is information. So for us, that was really important. That year, we only had one multilingual learner coordinator. We immediately worked to hire a second. We also do a lot of work, our multilingual learners in particular, when families want to enroll with us who have students who need multilingual services, they have a mandatory meeting with our coordinators so that they know, like, this is not a bilingual or a dual language, like they need to know all the different programs that are available to them here in New York City and what we are and what we're not, so that they can also make the decision that they want to make based on what best meets the needs of their kiddos. So it is definitely also last year, we did receive an influx of students from like migrant and asylee seeking shelters. So we also had more kind of students at the beginning of their English language development across all of our grades than we had previously. So again, we are always looking at data and trying to reflect on how we can best serve our subgroup populations, not just because it's required, but because that is what our school was designed to do. So if we set out to be a school that supports diverse learners, but we're under, right, our students are not meeting proficiency rates, that is very concerning for us. And so the concern that community members have, our school has as well, and we work to like get better.
Hi, my name is Javier Salamanca. I'm one of the co-founders of Voces Ciudadanas. We were here with you many years ago because we were here campaigning for more schools in Sunset Park, more public schools in Sunset Park because of the severe overcrowding that was happening in 2015. Since that time, I think enrollment, for many reasons, birth rates and affordability crisis in Sunset Park, in New York City as a whole, has caused a decline of enrollment over 35%. So some schools that were enrolled with 1,200 students now have 700 students, right? And some of the things that memory serves me correctly, you were very, saw the involvement of the community and some of the respect for the work that the community was doing at that time. But I think the location of the school does not reflect that in terms of being across the street from two middle schools, being in the zone of PS 516, a couple of blocks from PS 1, from PS 24, from the new school, PS 958, right? Things that the community worked really hard, and that luckily we do have a class size law, right? That will help teachers and schools be, but I think the location is one of the things that really irks a lot of people here in the community about that. And also just a lot of the things, and I think there's some, a lot of the things that are offered are things that like enrichment. A lot of schools offer a lot of enrichment. I think we don't have the brochures or the flossy, the glossy print that shows that. I think there's a lot of great work happening in Sunset Park. And just the, and I don't want this to be personal because it is within the context of Prospect, LEAP Charter, right? So this is within the context in New York City and here in Sunset that was untouched by charter schools 10 years ago, right? No Success Academy and all that stuff that was in the news, but kind of like the precedent of this sense, right? Like we were here saying no to charters about that because we wanted locally, you could go to your CEC meeting, you could go see a lot of data evaluated by a lot of people, a lot of principals who are here, a lot of publicly published data for years and years, right? That's really debated and talked about very openly, right? Anybody's been to the last CEC meeting, they were talking about English language learners and principals were responding to the community about that. So I think the level of accountability, I understand the charter, I understand that small piecemeal, but just about the structure of charters overall are not as transparent. And that mid-level, right, between local and state, right, which is a big gap, that in-between level is very important, is part of the concerns, right, of how do we hold people accountable to what they say they're doing with the children in this community, right? So those things, I think, and the general context of that this is not just one charter, this is three, we're talking about three, and also the cost benefit, right? When you give away a building or when a building is used for something, it's no longer available for something else, such as low-income housing, affordable housing. which a lot of the buildings that have been, you know, the library and the other building over here on 32nd Street, which is something that our community has asked for and has identified, and that all of New York City has identified as a really big need, right? If you pay attention to the mural campaign, everything's about affordability for working class people in New York City. So I think just in the context of all that, 3 charter schools, the lack of middle level transparency, and the cost, right? Losing a space that could be something for housing, and also the change in enrollment is combined really, I think it would make a case for not being here. And I think for all the work you're doing to go to downtown and back, you could go to the charter and change to a location that needs, that's overcrowded, that needs, and I think that would truly reflect some commitment to what is needed in this community at this time in 2025 and moving forward, and not what was, you know, needed or thought was needed in 2015.
Hi. I am very pleased to be able to hear more about your school. I am a PS 516 parent, but I'm also an employee of the Department of Education. So I just want to name I'm here in a personal capacity, not in a professional capacity at all. And I'm glad that you surfaced, and somebody earlier surfaced, the role of multilingual learners. You said you have 40% multilingual learners in your school. And I'm understanding, based on the fact that you said you don't have a dual language or a bilingual program, you offer a freestanding ENL program. Is that correct? Okay, so can you share a little bit more about the services, how those are provided? You named you have coordinators, but I'm trying to understand a little bit more based on the fact that you've already shared perhaps old data that 40%, so I wouldn't, to be fair, I don't consider 40% of your population a subgroup. I consider it, right? It's a significant portion. So if 40% of your population is not meeting expected gains, can you speak a little bit more about those services and how you're providing them?
So yeah, I use the term subgroup just because that's what NICED uses to, for the when you're looking at the data, but I totally agree. It's not a subgroup. It's a big portion of our population. So when we originally designed our school, right, knowing it was going to be open enrollment and not zoned by zip code, there were, you know, and also just for my background as an educator, I was trained in something called SIOP or sheltered English instruction protocols and things of that nature. When I worked in Boston as a teacher, it was required that every teacher receive that training and certification. So when I worked there, that was kind of where I was learned and trained. So when we were applying for our charter, and I specifically, obviously knowing that the school was designed for the Sunset Park community, knowing the demographics of the community, the design of the school, right? And again, I understand this has changed, but at the time, the smaller class size with a 13-to-1 student ratio, as well as the commitment to small group instruction, and then training our teachers, right, on the SIOP protocols, and basically having the mindset of like all of our teachers are in charge of the language development of our students, and what does that look like in math, in writing, in reading, and doing a lot of the science of reading, you know, phonics instruction early on that we know, again, the research showing around the benefit of the small group instruction for that cohort of learners. But again, the data showing us that we were underperforming, that is when we invested in kind of a more, I guess you would say, robust ENL program where we hired more coordinators to do more. I would say they do 3 things, right? First of all, they do our NISTL and our NICES testing so that we know exactly where on the language development spectrum all of our kiddos are. And based on where they are in their language development spectrum, that tells us how many minutes of additional ENL instruction that they need a week, right? So that is like, they do all that testing, and then they create a schedule based on that. And then it's a combination of push in, pull out, small group, again, depending where they are on their language development spectrum, and then also collaborating with teachers. So using that Friday time where MLL coordinators and classroom teachers can collaborate and co-plan essentially lessons with multilingual learners in mind, and ensure that the supports are in place also in the in classroom general instruction.
Okay, so I appreciate that. And again, SIOP is, you know, a model that's used for those that might not be familiar. You integrate language instruction into different content areas. So I appreciate that. I guess my wondering and my main concern is when we're talking about enrollment, and you already surfaced that scores or data that's available, your Ls are not performing necessarily at the same proficiency levels as they are elsewhere in D15. And I think what's really special about D15, and specifically our neighborhood, is the availability of dual language programming. That has, and again, my background for context, I am an ESL. I've been in the UE for 18 years, offering multilingual learner support services as a school administrator and district leader. And research time and again proves the efficacy of these models. Moreover, I will speak specifically to PS516, the two-way model, wherein you have a mixed English and, in this instance, Spanish target language. That is how you build true community and connections so that all of our kids can share language and celebrate language. And what I'm not hearing from you necessarily, and again, to be fair, I didn't ask this directly, explicit ways that you're promoting multilingualism within your community, especially now that you're building out K-8, right? We have a responsibility to all of our community members to build the ability to engage with our neighbors and friends. And moreover, in terms of economic mobility, giving students the opportunity to study another language, whether it be English or in the instance of my child, Spanish. She will have opportunities, including the New York State Seal of Biliteracy, have the opportunity to study in college, engage in other countries, and on average, people who are multilingual earn 5 to 20% more than people in comparable positions. And so the fact that you're opening up in this community, and as we've all named, enrollment is a key issue, these dual language programs are incredibly vulnerable, right? You have to maintain enrollment. We're already seeing now our beautiful parallel models where you have the English and the Spanish teacher. Suddenly they're getting collapsed into one class where it's one teacher having to alternate. This waters down the quality of this work. The teachers that we have are amazing and busting their butts, but it's incredibly hard to do this. And I just want to name, you've named that you have all of these unique services. We have unique services in this community that can be compromised if we lose the enrollment. I'm looking right now, Sunset Park Prep. They have French dual language, they have Spanish dual language. And I think we have a responsibility to be honest about the fact that if we're working in this community and we're not being very explicit about promoting multilingualism in our schools, it's not supporting a tolerant, community-oriented neighborhood. And so I just want to put that out there. I thank you for your time.
Oh, no, you need a microphone. Yes.
Hi, my first question is why? Like, why here? My name is Daniel Aguilar. I've been a middle school ELA teacher at Dewey for over 20 years. I lost count. I'm a homeowner here. My kids go to 516. Shout out to the 516 crew here. And shout out to Lines and CF. Oh, my question is why here? And also, do you know what you're up against? I think people have made it very clear the beast of the educational system we have here in Sunset Park, led by our principals in 516, in prep, at Dewey, right? PS1, shout outs, yeah. And at Prospect, right? Like, you're dealing with beasts and you're coming here with this failing record, low scores, coordinator this, I got a 35-year lease, we got to do this. That funding, I mean, I don't know if you have it locked, I'm not sure, but that money should go to like CFL and all the other people that Trump is cutting money for.
Can you please ask your question, please?
Oh, I will, sorry. Didn't mean to rerant. My first question was why, so I kind of started with that. My other question is like, what do you bring to the table that isn't already here? And not only that, perfected over decades of people that have been here in this community working hard, and you're just coming back to it.
So yeah, there's a lot. And again, I want to try to do my best to address some of the, so first and foremost, I just want to be clear, like I'm not, I hope, and I haven't, and I never, ever in this whole process have been disparaging towards any of the traditional public schools in this area, right? I believe great schools for kids, of course, exist here. I send my child to one. I think that schools here have a lot to offer. And again, when families enroll with us, we're always very clear with them about like what their other options are. Especially in terms of the point that was made earlier around like multilingual learner programs specifically. Two things, like at the time, like because the question why is like a big one. So I'm not sure if it's so much why in this particular location, which again, I think I've addressed that like there were just like a lot of factors and challenges that went into that. But specifically like why Sunset Park? I mean, again, I think I talked about this a bit, but initially when I was actually working in PS24 at the time back in 2016, 2017. And the landscape was just different at the time, right? The school, I live across from PS 169 now. At the time, to Javier's point, there were 1,700 kiddos there, K through 5, right? And so the landscape was very different. So the why I originally did this is because I knew that elementary schools, I knew there were a lot of course, like amazing dual language and bilingual programs in the community. A lot of the schools the schools that were currently here were by zip code zone, right? So I thought like it was an opportunity to have an open enrollment, small, I just wanted like one small elementary school that it was just all about small. It was just 2 classes every grade, cap class sizes at 26, which again, I know is no longer novel, but at the time it was, right? So like the why initially for when we wrote our charter, and I hear folks saying like, abandon the school, you don't need it anymore. But like, you have to also understand that is very challenging because every day I serve 320 students, 50% of which live in the 2 zip codes of this community, right? So it's like, there's a lot of commitments and promises I've made to the families we currently serve. You can, our families are certainly probably best equipped to answer why they choose our school. But typically it is things like our school day runs, from 8:10 to 4:15. So it's a little bit of a longer school day. We offer, again, guaranteed transportation to and from our school. Again, because we have a longer school day, we're able to embed the double enrichment periods each day. And again, I know there's many amazing and beautiful things happening. I'm just trying to give some of the examples of why families have said that they've, chosen us. And again, a lot of it does have to do with that like small community feel, access, to not just me, but all of our leadership team, our head of inclusive learning, our head of curriculum and learning, our head of operations, right? There's just like a lot of access when you're in the kind of small school environment. And so it just allows opportunities for a lot of partnership. Again, I'm not saying that doesn't happen other places. I'm just saying that's one of the reasons why families selected RISE.
Someone else, just in the back.
Hello, good afternoon. Hello, listen, yeah. Kids with okay, I'm saying, as a parent, I send to my kids to school to learn, to prepare for the life. And I want to choose what school I want to put my kids. Not the government sends you have to go to that school, you have to go to that school. It's not for my, I'm looking for my kids. Kids, my older, they went to other school, they have excellent preparation. Seeing now and listen for other option, why we don't work to serve more in the school and education. Education is learning right, science, social studies, and prepare for the college. Did you all ask how many students are preparing for be a doctor, to be architect? Is in the college. You know how many students not prepared fight for kids with special needs. We still look Horizon class, but I'm not against school because charter school open for many other students who are frustrated in the public school. I'm saying frustrated because I saw many students have different ability to learn. And some of them need to continue growing. Growing means it's not just educating politicals. here. Like, fair.
Excuse me, you need to speak into the microphone because we're getting messages that they can't hear you.
Trying.
Oh,
Open the. We open and. That. And still going behind teachers. Great. Teacher
the
involvement and
Laura, please direct the
Ah.
questions and comments to the board, not to the people in the room. Thank you.
because the parents, as I'm a parent speaking, and I'm just saying is, if you are bringing the school, and I hear many parents asking for that, you bring here in school, are you willing to open conversation with a parent like me? We have with different abilities for the students. Thank you. That's my question.
Thank you, Laura. And just before we continue, I recognize our microphones are a little bit wonky. They work better if you are closer to the front of the room than to the back of the room. So please bear with us. And I apologize that it's getting warm in here. You can blame the NYPD for not fixing the air conditioning.
Someone has the mic.
Oh, I don't know if you want.
Oh, to that, yes. So, I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing. And like I said, I agree. I think like families would be the best equipped to kind of answer the reasons for why they choose Brooklyn Rise. But again, in terms of inclusive learning and supporting diverse learners, like that was a big piece of it, was that we wanted that the kind of two teacher model across all classrooms, not just our ICT rooms, to again be supportive of diverse learners, even those that don't necessarily have IEPs that designate them for the additional services that way. Again, like that is our inclusive learning department was created to ensure that we can, and again, just supporting families, again, to Laura's point around navigating the system can just be really overwhelming for families. So providing a lot of support around the IEP process and how to advocate, and also again, based on like what our school is able to offer in terms of supports and where like other school and other school models, my son's school PS 958, they have different small models like AIMS that our school doesn't have. So making sure our families know, like based on their child's needs, which school environments might be best supportive for them.
Go ahead with the question.
Hi, my name is Yesli. I am a parent, not a teacher, parent. Been here literally my entire life, and now I'm raising two kids in this community. A little to what she just mentioned, you know, that we should better our schools. I agree. We should definitely better our schools and not focus on charter schools, is what I think. Because I hear that's ridiculous. This community needs that money to better the schools that already exist, not put it into schools that kind of segregate the kids that are already living here. You know, and I'm saying that because everyone keeps asking you, like, what are you doing for multilingual students? You know, and it's just this runaround answer, right? Not really a point. Like, how many exactly coordinators do you have? You say you have 300 or something students. I only heard 2 coordinators. That is not helpful. How are 2 coordinators going to help 300 something students? Let's say 40% of that, right? how will they help parents that come in for questions? You know, you also mentioned having a sense of community. I feel a sense of community in my school, and there are literally 2 buildings. But I feel like my principal to anybody, to any of the staff, and communicate any sort of concern and how are you, whatever. There's a sense of community, and it's literally 2 staff look like, and it's inclusive, actually anything else that shows the inclusivity, right? Because our that when what exactly does that mean? Are you saying you're bilingual, you're monolingual? Sorry, we
You
can't
please
help
go
you
ahead
because we
and
don't
ask your
have
question.
anybody.
We will keep running until 8 o'clock, and then we will stop. So I would like you to ask your question.
I asked a bunch of questions, right? Like, or monolingual parents who come to the school. Are you having interpreters? Or are these just people that kind of know Spanish, but they don't? And
Thank you. So before we continue, I just want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to ask any questions. So please be quick with your questions, and so we can continue this. And
I thought I was going to answer first. The very important questions around language access, and that's really important to us at RISE. So even though we are a language diverse community where Spanish is the predominant language spoken, we also have a number of families who speak different Chinese dialects. We also have some Russian speaking families. So, but because 70% of our families are like Spanish is the primary language spoken at home, our entire kind of front office, you would say, like our office staff is all bilingual in Spanish. We provide all of our materials to families in their home language of their choice. We provide real-time live interpretation at all of our family meetings. So when I do those coffee with the principal, there are real-time interpreters available so that families who need to hear the presentation in their language of choice, we provide that for both Chinese and Spanish, but we would do that for any language requested by a family who needed it. And we, again, our staff, many of them are Spanish speakers because it's something that we, again, look to intentionally recruit for is staff members who do speak the languages of our students. Our multilingual learner coordinators, we also have Chinese speaking staff members as well to also support families in that. And then as a public school, we have access to the DOE language line. So all of our teachers are trained on how to use the language line to, again, contact parents in the home language of their choice. So if they don't have access to the language, they're able to. And again, I just want to reiterate, like when I am giving the reasons why families tell me why they choose RIDE, I'm not saying that that isn't also provided and couldn't be found in other schools in Sunset Park.
Hi, my name is John Keating. I am a parent and I live a block down from here on 4th. My question concerns the location. One particular concern I have is that the traffic on 4th is snarled with school buses, industrial traffic from near the coast, commuters, and especially in that particular junction, it can be quite dangerous in the morning when I'm walking my son to school. What consideration has been given for the increase in traffic, given that now 50% of students are coming from outside of the zip codes?
I really appreciate the question. I talked to a parent the other day who has a kiddo in 516 and a kiddo in Prospect. And one thing that he said to me on like a positive, because I was kind of explaining to him, I was like, it's challenging because I understand that there are some like concerns. And he was like, I think in terms of the location of the school. And he was saying, a positive aspect of kind of a school corridor, so to speak, where there are so many schools is that there are more opportunities for kind of traffic control with the understanding of that. So I also, when we were designing the building, the original address of the gas station was a 4th Avenue address, and we're using a 40th Street address. So that when the school buses are doing drop off at the front entrance, it is on 40th Street. We also, again, as folks know, because my son is at PS 958 and they've been advocating for crossing guards, but there's a shortage. And we are like, their school is like, you have to walk past this gas station with like a bunch of curb cuts and in and outs, and it's not safe. But they have not been able to get a crossing guard at that school. Like charter schools definitely are not getting crossing guards, which I understand if there's a shortage, obviously the priority isn't going to be there. So what we do is from like a staffing perspective, staff during like high traffic, we kind of turn we're our own crossing guard, so to speak, during those high traffic times. Also, I think the question was asked last time I was here, just about being like a good neighbor to the car wash, which is a business that's been in existence for a long time, and like also finding ways to like work together with them so that they understand like this is our arrival time and our dismissal time. Having 7 buses in and out of downtown Brooklyn is extremely challenging, and we've been managing that in a very kind of like quick way and safe. And so it is something that we feel like we're prepared to do in a way that will hopefully not have too great of an impact on like traffic.
Before we continue in the room, we do have some people in the virtual space, so I would like to give the opportunity to them as well.
Okay, Kathy Zhang, if you're still there, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, how are you? Hello?
Oh.
Yep, go ahead,
Can you
Kathy.
hear me?
Yes.
Uh, First, thank you for this presentation. I really appreciate that. I do have some questions. I know that the new school is going to be 4201 4th Avenue. It's the old gas station, right?
Yes.
The address is 410 40th Street.
Can you prove that this location is going to be 100% safe for the kids, especially for the young children?
So I think I answered that a little bit around like traffic control and keeping kiddos safe during like arrival and dismissal.
No, I don't mean that. I mean like it's the former gas stations. I mean, it's like the environmental issues. Like who is
Yeah.
going to be responsible if the students or the teachers get sick in the future?
So that is a great question. So a few things. One, the BP gas station was not in existence for a very long time. And so by the time that that gas station went into that location, there were a lot of rules and regulations around containment, particularly with the BP organization, which many of you know have had issues with environmental. So there, like the way that it was like put in was in such a way with the understanding of like there wasn't like as much concern around like some of the environmental leakage and issues that like older gas, if it was like an older gas station pre regulations would be a concern. Also, the lease was written such that if the developer did not pass the environmental testing standards for, again, like they're not going to dig a foundation or build a foundation unless they're given the clear from all the requirements from the city on building on a space. And also as like an additional kind of protection, so to speak, there's nothing below grade. So it's like there's the foundation, there's nothing below, right? There's no basement, there's no storage, definitely no kiddos down there. But it's like that's just like an additional way of being like, okay, the foundation is being laid, but there's nothing happening below ground either as like an additional kind of protection in that way. But they did just approve the environmental testing like they passed all of that, and so that the foundation is going to begin to be dug.
Thank you. We have one more, right?
Emily Rabaza, if you're still there, please unmute yourself.
Hi, I am here as a teacher at PS 24 as well as a parent at PS 958. So my concern as I'm listening in, and from what I know from being inside and being a parent, is that there are many elementary schools. As you stated before, whenever you had gotten this funding for your school, there may not have been a charter school down the block. There may not have been the expansion of 516. There was no 958 at the time. However, all of these schools do exist now. Our student enrollment has gone down because there's so many schools within that radius of Sunset Park that can meet the needs of students, especially those with special needs and our English language learners with the expansion of dual language programs. So I am wondering if you have the capability to bus students now, why not open this school in a location where that need is still there, as opposed to taking students away from public schools that are already decreasing in population due to the fact that there are so many options now in that particular part of the neighborhood. Maybe going to a different part of Sunset Park or going to a different part of Park Slope or other parts of Brooklyn where if you have the capability of busing families, you could still meet the needs of the community. I feel like parents who choose charter schools do commute. We already have families that instead of participating in the schools that are in the neighborhood already travel to Park Slope to go to PS10 because they, for whatever reason, do not want to attend the schools in our community. So I'm wondering why still choose a location where it's not needed in the way that it was before if there's still a possibility that this busing could happen or that this school could open in a place where there is a need for it.
I think I addressed some of these questions already, but I will try to address quickly. So again, to the question of like looking at other sites, we did, like I said, we did look in Gowanus, Park Slope, kind of more of the like Greenwood area as well. And again, it's, it was very challenging to find space anywhere, period. So that is something that we explored and looked for before citing at 410 40th. And then also, again, this question, which I really hear, I understand the enrollment landscape has changed here, but I do just want to again say that like we've been in operation for 6 years, 50% of it, like the reason why we have so much busing is because our families wanted to stay with our community, also with the understanding that we made a commitment to return, right? It's like we wouldn't be doing so much busing had we told families, oh, we're moving to downtown Brooklyn. So sorry, the community that we had designed the school for, that we had told you we were here for, we're now gone. It would be a different story, but again, the commitment was the relocation was temporary and we were always planning to return. And it's not just the 50% of the families in this direct zip code, but like I said, 70% of our families are here or South Brooklyn, where there is less access to school choice based on the politics there that exist. And there is more still overcrowding in schools in that area. So that is like some of the I guess, answers to those questions.
We will take some in the room and then we're going to go back to the virtual space. So 1 and 2. Yes, yours. And then we will go back to the virtual space. And just please be direct and ask your question because we are running out of time. Thank you.
So my questions are, okay, so in your last presentation, I was kind of stepping in and out for your presentation this time. You mentioned that you never got your certification to teach in the DOE. And I believe you did mention that your teachers are certified, which is great, but are they certified to teach English language learners, which is different. You have to be different certification. There's a difference between having certified teachers and then your coordinators, which I'm sure they do good work, but it's not the same as having certified teachers. Also, you mentioned you have flyers that you send out, and that's great that you have the budget for that. I'm sure many local schools would also love to have the budget for that. Where does that money come from? Where does the money come from for your buses? Also, if you were unable to fill the space in order to justify the 4 floors you're requesting, what would happen to the lease? There's in the document that where you have to explain the remediation process, the proposal for that, plus to build, it actually says, and I don't know how to read these things, but that the application was for residential. So if this doesn't pan out, is the developer going to make this residential? And also, on that same document, it said that that site had been a gas station since 1925. So that's a long time. So that's a lot of buildup, which means way more remediation than is being undergone right now.
So I can't speak to, I guess, the history of, but I guess all I know is that BP gas station was put in new and like most recently enough that the requirements had changed. I'm sorry, I really should have brought something to take notes because one of the questions you asked, I really wanted to I think one of the questions around, like, if we're not able to meet our enrollment, like, what then happens to the building? Oh, and the residential, my understanding of why the residential is the highest level of, due diligence, because if you're gonna have folks living in a space, right, it's different than if it's like a commercial storefront and people are in and out. So when you're a school applying for remediation or environmental testing, but again, the zoning maps that I've seen show that it's not zoned for residential. It's a commercially zoned lot. So I can't, I'm definitely not an expert to that.
Can you please let her?
No, I'm saying it's more thorough. I'm saying it's more thorough. No. I'm saying that if you saw residential as what they, like, that's the standard that they're applying, even though it's not residential, because there are kids in there all day, right? It's like, it's not just like an in and out, like storefront, which would be some commercial spaces, but this is not that. It's like they're there all day. So that, again, but to your point, I'm not an expert. I definitely don't pretend to be in that area. I just do know that the standards are high for citing a school and a space in terms of remediation and environmental testing. And then the question on certification that you asked. So when we are like recruiting staff for our school, we have like just the way the DOE has kind of like a salary scale. We also have a salary scale based on certification, and then you get additional bumps within that scale, right? If you're SPED certified or if you hold some kind of an E&L additional certification. I will be transparent. In recent years for hiring, we have not found as many teachers with the E&L certification as we would like, because to your point, of course, our MLL coordinators hold that certification, but we also provide incentives for current staff who are interested in pursuing that. So like if a teacher comes and joins us and they have their Gen Ed certification, but they're either interested in pursuing an additional special education or E&L add-on, that is something, again, we don't have like the big budgets that some charter schools do, but we like would do some things like, well, we can provide some like flex schedule if you want to go to a grad school, and you need to leave to go to class, 2 days a week or things like that. So we try to support staff who are interested in pursuing those like additional certifications as well. Oh, funding question. Oh, yes. So our student recruitment, like I said, I mean, I'm not saying that they're in comparison with many charter schools that you will find, who I can't even imagine, just based on quotes that I've received on like what it is to put on like an ad in a magazine, or certainly like a bus or a subway ad, is astronomical. So our overall student recruitment budgeting each year is about $10,000, and that pays for the flyers. And then, like I said, it's mostly just on the ground, or that pays for the mailers, which is, to your point, our largest recruitment cost. Is just sending out those one-time mailers, and then a lot of it's just folks like staff walking around putting up flyers, meeting with local businesses. We sometimes make partnerships with like early childhood centers to have like presentations and info sessions for families, but a lot of it's just like in-person work. But like I said, we don't do a ton of recruitment because most of our families who come to us, it's like referrals and word of mouth.
But you need a mic. And then after then you take your question, and then we go back to virtual space. We take 2 more, and I think that will be it, because we don't have enough time. And I want to be respectful for her time as well.
Follow-up was that you mentioned that you from where?
No, so we're publicly funded. So our traditional, we receive per pupil funding the way any school does. And then I would say then we have to create a budget, which I know someone mentioned is not available. Like my understanding is that if you go to the NYSED charter school office, you can see like all the charter schools like budgets. So you could see ours. And so that would kind of give you a sense of allocation. But again, we try to spend as little as possible. We don't spend a lot on 2 things that some other charter networks have to spend larger money on, which is student recruitment and also staff recruitment. Because we have such a high teacher retention, we don't have to spend a lot on trying to convince teachers to work at our school. So those are 2 areas that are actually like pretty relatively small, but it's all from just like our operating budget. And then, from there.
Public funding.
Yes, yeah, totally publicly funded.
Sure.
I think she's in waiting. No.
Good evening. I'm Maria Roca. Been not born here, but been in the neighborhood since 1964. So we've seen our share of bad schools that this community, because it didn't come from the Department of Education, it didn't come from the politicians, the parents, the people here made the change happen to the schools that we have today, to the seats, the extra seats that we have today. And for instance, Sunset Park, which is a little rinky-dinky community organization, And many other people were the ones who did what we had to do to come to here and continue always making it better. So I have a number of questions, and I'm just going to put the questions out there. Oh, not more than that. I don't necessarily want to.
Wait.
No, I don't want an answer right now, but I think I just want to put the questions out there. Maybe Carrie can answer, the board can submit to the board with your permission.
That's
is that okay?
correct.
Oh,
That's correct. Yeah.
so I'm just going to shoot one statement and then the questions. Very disappointed that the developer is not here today. If we're talking transparency, if we're talking being a good neighbor, a building, someone who's going to run the building, the community, not only parents, but everybody wants to know. So then, what questions are, what could happen to this building, the use of this building, if and when Rice ceases to exist, for whatever reason? We want, as a community, we want to know what this building is going, what has to happen. I'm not expecting you to have the answers, but the developer needs to. We want to know. But to you, for the school, are salaries and benefits to your staff and teachers comparable to the New York City Board of Education salaries and benefits? And, well, benefits. So because we want our teachers, we want our staff, we want the people who are around their children to have those benefits and that security. Okay. Then, question.
Questions, yes.
Wait. Just
One more question and then we move on.
okay. Oh, okay. I have many, but are the Rice monthly board meetings open to the community, since the community, we collectively are paying the bills? Can we walk in and,
Yeah.
we can?
Yes, and they will,
And with that, yes.
currently at 9 Hanover Place.
It's, we do,
thank
we
you,
want,
Maria.
we want to give, excuse me, we want to give the opportunity to all the people to ask questions. So please, I want that to respect the questions as well.
So it's not so much questions, but comment, and then I will embed some questions. So my name is Wanda Lopez Ramirez, and I am the very, very proud principal of PS1 right there on 47th Street. Thank you. I'm here with my colleagues, so thank you so very much. So Sunset Park and PS1 has been a cornerstone of our community for generations. We're more than just a building. We are a place of deep-rooted
Can you
relationship.
just go directly to the
Yeah.
questions, please?
Give me a second. You gave everybody else a chance, right? And I was raising my hand very patiently, so thank you. So we have, just like you said, and right, we have the commitment to children, just like my colleagues here, teachers, colleagues, everyone. I'm here tonight, obviously, to voice my opposition, all right? I know you say you're collaborative and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It sounds to me like this is a done deal, so we're in a different space. This is, we're here with Excellent Schools. I'm pretty much speaking about what a lot of my colleagues have said, talking about diverse learners, kind of charter schools do exactly this. They close to our public schools and they threaten
excuse me.
the delicate,
I would like you to ask you
balance that
questions
exists. Yes, absolutely, I shall.
because I want
The impact
sure
that this has
everyone
had
has-
is definitely going to be impactful in terms of our enrollment, as much as you said. You went from 320 to now for 360, 380, however, so, because you said a couple of them. So obviously, multilingual learners, our support for dual language. We as a school community, we have safety plans, right? That we have to, my 516 colleague is one of the sites that if my school should have any concern or any emergency, we go to 516. We go to PS24 if needed. Thank you so very much, PS24 representing, or we go to 94 because in our safety plan, we have to make sure to evacuate. So honestly, we are opposing you here. And then my question is about your safety plan. What is that going to be when schools really are not happy that you're here, right? And honestly, I also want to obviously just add to what you had said about, yes, taxpayers are paying for that area. And yes, we definitely want to have, we felt that we came here to have more of a say-so, but Honestly, I felt like the doors have been shut and this is a done deal. And basically, we're here to be opposing what is happening right now, but we don't have a voice. So
Thank you.
To answer your question about the safety plan piece, like, I mean, obviously, ideally, we're hoping to like make roads and like collaboration and partnership with our schools. We're currently in downtown Brooklyn. We moved there kind of all of a sudden out of nowhere. It's much more saturated with schools, all types of schools down there. And we also, you know, we're able to Brooklyn Tech and then another local school, I'm forgetting the PS name, on Livingston are part of our current safety plan. So again, we're, you know, hopefully we would like to be a way, like a space for a safe space for other students in other schools. And we're hoping other schools will be open to us as well. But you know, I can't answer that because we will be required to come up with a safety plan, and we will be required to share that with the state because that has to be approved for sure. And then to the question around, like, I definitely don't want to make it seem as if like I have closed the door. It is truly, I think, I don't know if it was just the way it was communicated by CEC 15 or whatnot, but it's like, it's not a new school and it's not, nothing is proposed. So that's why there's no kind of like community action that can really take place other than, which I do think is really important, folks expressing their concerns and asking their questions, which I can 100% receive, and also helps our school operate in a way that is more with the community in mind, because we have already signed a legal binding document and lease, and the building is underway. So to your point, the times in which last year there was a public meeting when we went through the renewal process that CEC 15 also had publicized, because anytime a charter goes through renewal, there's a public meeting where folks can come and speak against the school or ask for it. And in that meeting, I named, and it's a publicly recorded meeting, I named our relocation plans to come back to Sunset Park. So there have been opportunities when we were first chartered, and then every 5 years where there are meaningful ways that the state will receive stakeholder input on whether or not that school should continue to exist. So there are times, it's just to your point, that time was last year when we went through the renewal process, and now it has moved forward. And again, I really receive the questions and concerns from everyone and appreciate it. And again, I would hope for more opportunities for collaboration with schools.
But before we continue, I recognize the hour is late. The room is getting warmer. I do want to get one more person who is on the Zoom, and I would like to close the meeting after.
Also, wait, but we're already running out of time. If anyone else has questions, personally, I'll make sure that those questions are delivered to Carrie. You can see me right after the meeting, and we can deliver those questions, but we don't have no more time, so we will proceed with this. And thank you for your understanding. We open it for virtual.
Okay, John DeLuper, you can unmute yourself.
All right, thank you. So my question was, and it kind of follows up on what you just mentioned, but when you talked about the charter and the renewals and all that, now I know you said you were here and then you were in downtown Brooklyn. The charter is only for District 15, is not anywhere in the community. Is that right?
So yeah, so to your point, we're required to stay within CST 15, but within our charter application specifically, we were like the design of the school, which you have to include in your charter, was designed with Sunset Park in mind. But to your point, no, we can't. That's how we're able to be in downtown Brooklyn currently. We're on Hanover between Fulton Mall and Livingston. If you cross the street, you're in, I think, District 19. But we are technically, where we are in downtown Brooklyn is still within the bounds of District 15, which is why we were granted the temporary relocation to that space.
Okay, and then the follow-up to that is, so then when you undergo your 5-year renewals, it's always for the same district, or can you also apply for other ones? Or like, I know, especially since you mentioned in the beginning, being close to 20 and 15 and people were talking about those different ones. When you do a renewal, it's only for the same district, right? It can't be expanded or anything like that. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So with that, we will conclude this meeting. I'll leave my email. I will leave my email.
But folks, this is the second time we've had this meeting. We didn't. We publicize our meetings in our newsletter and in our Facebook. We're trying our best. The room is very warm. And where I'm asking folks, if you have additional questions and comments, to please email the board at bk07@cb.nyc.gov. We will publish the responses for the meeting minutes for this committee meeting.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. And I really would like to have more time, but we don't have no more time. So if anyone